everyone. Hello and welcome to the College Pathway Module 101. I'm Martin Brown, National Director of Operations for FCUSA, and I'm delighted to be here to present Module 101, which is geared towards freshmen and sophomore high school student athletes. I'm being joined today by our partner, the Learning Associates Director, Larry Blumenstick. Larry, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you, Martin. It's great to be with the players tonight and their families.
And happy Hanukkah.
Thank you very much. Lit a candle tonight.
Excellent. So Module 101, for those that are not familiar with the College Pathway program at FCUSA, is geared towards an introduction to freshmen and sophomore players and families about the college admissions process and recruitment process. The entire College Pathway program is going to touch on various things from all aspects of the recruitment and admissions process, from college resumes with our fifth module, which is our college coach panel, to our webinar next week, which is more in depth for our junior class as well. So Larry, we're going to kick things off today with our College Pathway 101 module, and the first things we've been discussing a lot with the coaches and also the players and the families is, well, when is the good time to start to explore colleges? Obviously, we're talking specifically to freshmen and sophomore players, but as they get on into high school, as they get onto competitive teams like that we have at FCUSA, when is the time to start?
It's really not too early for freshmen and sophomores to start talking to colleges. And I'm talking about colleges. We've spoken about this an awful lot. The proposition that this is about college and that soccer is a vehicle for college and soccer is a wonderful part of college, but this is about college. So to the extent that students are speaking to coaches, emailing coaches, they're not going to get much in the way of response. Nothing but a courtesy. That doesn't mean they shouldn't try. And the other part of my answer to your question is, it's not too early to talk to colleges. That is, find out about colleges. There are two files started. There is a college file and there is a coach's file. And we'll go into some of that, but it's never too early to start. Are you curious about what these students ought to be doing and how they ought to be doing it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the important aspects for our players is as they get into that freshman age and they start to acclimatize to the high schools, obviously they've got to start thinking about their academics for college as well as their soccer resume and their soccer career in college as well. So I know that one of the questions that you like to ask students is, why are they going to college?
Exactly.
And I think that's something they have to consider.
And I don't expect many freshmen or even many sophomores to know why they're going to college. But it's a question they can start asking themselves, and it's a question that they can only answer after they start making contact with colleges. So if you have a tournament, if you're taking your players, or if Kevin is, or if one of the other coaches is taking players to a tournament, and you have a little time, make an effort to walk on a campus. Make an effort to walk inside an admissions office. Ask a question about what can be studied on that campus, because this is not something that is easy to learn, not in the U.S. In the U.S. we have 4,000 four-year colleges, and there are a lot of different patterns in those colleges. So it doesn't come easily, and your high school is not going to be in a position to give you a lot of information as a player until you're further along in your high school career. So players, scholar athletes, have a responsibility to start early.
Okay. And you see that is there a difference between male and female players of when they should be starting to look and take that first step?
It's worthwhile for male and female players to start early, but we do find that female players are recruited a little bit earlier, so it's important for them to have more information about colleges, sometimes a little bit sooner than the guys.
Okay. And well, now that we've started and we've got into Module 101, I do want to just remind everyone that are watching at home. One of the reasons we wanted to do this module live is not to keep myself and Larry on our toes, but because we were looking for interaction and questions from our families, from our players, and from our parents. So if you do have a question for Larry, please click on the live chat button below the screen on YouTube, and you can send in your question. And please make sure you identify your club when you send it in, and we'll be happy to answer any of those questions. We'll also put time aside at the end of this module to be able to answer any questions that we get as well.
Excellent.
So, obviously, one of the things that people are going to start to talk about as they go through that process, as they start as freshmen and getting into their sophomore year and they start this process, what is that first step that those players or those families should be taking in that? Is it to call a coach? Is it to identify a college? Is it to have a list of colleges? What is that first step as a parent? If I'm going through this for the first time, what is my first step to help my son or daughter, my player, take that first step into exploring the colleges?
I'd say that a list is too ambitious to expect of a freshman, because that list has to fit financially, it has to fit academically, it has to fit athletically. So it is a little too ambitious to think that many freshmen can generate a list of colleges in which they might be interested and in which they could be admissible. However, when you're taking a team to a tournament, if you're in an area that has 4 or 5 colleges nearby, they can look at a guide, or these days they can just look online and become familiar with those colleges, and from among the 5, make a plan to visit 1 or 2, and maybe make a plan to visit the area where students hang out, whether it's a part of a town or whether it's a small town and there are cafes there. Go get a sense for what's going on in that town. Go get a sense for what the students look like, and if you can work it into your schedule, go onto campus. You know, by the time these players are getting deep into high school, they've eaten in enough Olive Gardens. They can skip one Olive Garden one time, right? Even though they're hungry, I know they've played, but they can skip one to go onto a campus and walk around.
And you think that that freshman age is the ideal age to start that process?
Because it doesn't have to be fraught with tension, because nobody has to make a decision. That's why I think freshman year is the right time to become familiar for an athlete, because by sophomore and junior year, those athletes are hoping that coaches are paying some attention to their playing life.
Okay, and we have a quick question on that topic, Larry, from the FCUSA New Jersey 05 girls.
Great.
And the question is, should they start doing anything about colleges now? They're not yet in high school. They're going to be in 7th and 8th grade. When they go to these tournaments, should they start also looking and doing that thing, or should they wait until they get to high school?
I don't think that's especially important in 7th and 8th grade. I wouldn't discourage it, but there's not much to be gained from it. There's no baseline for your academic qualifications yet in 7th and 8th grade. You haven't had an opportunity as a student to take an honors course or an AP course if you're capable of doing that kind of work. You haven't taken any standardized testing to know where you stand so that you can decide whether one of these colleges might be possible for you. So while I'd like to encourage every young person to become informed, 7th and 8th grade is probably too early to do anything meaningful. If you have an older brother or sister and they're visiting, well then tag along a little bit.
Right. So really the message is to start that as a freshman. As you get into college, start exploring very gently that whole process. Start, as you said, when you're at a tournament, whether it's out of state, in state, take a couple of hours and go and take a look at the campus.
I like the way you put that, Martin, when you say gently, because if you don't do it gently in 9th grade, you're certainly not going to be able to do it gently in 11th grade. It's going to be fraught with tension.
Okay, excellent. So moving on from that, as we start that exploration, the next question I think that parents will have is, who do they contact once they get into maybe later on into the sophomore year, or as they get into their sophomore year? Who are they contacting? Are they reaching out to the admissions office? Are they reaching out to the coaches first? And what is that interaction between the college coach and the admissions office at these schools?
That's a good question. I think it's got a few questions in it.
Okay.
Okay, so Who first? It doesn't matter to me as a guide to this process whether the student reaches out to admissions first or to the coach first, but it should not be only one or the other. And the only one or the other would always be the coach. That's what the athlete would rather do. I think that's not a sound way to go about it. The coach is not going to make the ultimate decision. Admissions is going to make the ultimate decision. And the suitability of the college doesn't come from the coach. The suitability of the team comes from the coach. So I'd say do both. Do it on a reasonable schedule and let each one know that you're talking to the other. Does that answer the question? There may have been another aspect to that, Mark.
Yeah, no, I also think it's important to kind of let people know what does it sound like when they are starting to have that contact and that communication with the schools, whether it be the admissions office, whether it be the coach. What does that process sound like in terms of reciprocating communication back from those schools?
It's very, very different. People in admissions offices are in the business of telling you about their college. And they're extremely good communicators. That's the nature of their job. So if you ask about an area of study, they're going to send you links to their website. They're going to tell you specific ways in which you can explore that area of study. Those are great conversations, and they're easy because they're not making a decision on freshmen. Now, the conversation with the coach is a little bit different. The conversation with the coach is just courtesy. It's not going to be extensive. The coach can only answer your emails. He can tell you what to look at. You can tell him where you're going to be in tournaments. If the coach is starting to take an interest, the coach could get in touch with you or one of your coaches, that sort of thing. But it's not going to be as deep and as meaningful. And I have some comments about the way students ought to be in touch with coaches, which has to do with a lot more than soccer.
Okay. And you care to share some of those things as these young players, these freshmen, these sophomores, start to make that communication?
Love to. One of the things that I think you and I have spoken about for many, many years is the fact that when an athlete is contacting a coach, what I do with the students I'm working with intimately is I tell them that nearly every time they contact the coach, I want them to say something about the college, about the curriculum, about the activities, about the specialized programs. I want them to do that for a few reasons, and I'll break them down into two broad categories.
Yeah,
one is the coach does not admit the student to the college,
right.
No matter what impression is given.
And I think that's a misconception by a lot of families as they have these conversations with coaches.
It's absolutely not true. They don't have a letter in their drawer. And if they want that letter to go to a student, they have to walk to the admissions office, and that admissions office makes the decision. So that's one of the reasons to always have that sort of information in the note. The second is, if the coach is getting interested in the player as an athlete, the coach knows, no matter what he says or she says, that admissions is going to make the decision. And the coach knows that there are many players communicating who are interested in playing, but only some who can play at the right level, and only some who can succeed academically.
Right.
To the extent that the student tells the coach what they're interested in, that coach is getting a much more comfortable feeling that it's worth putting some effort into that scholar athlete. I hope that explains it.
Yeah.
We've talked about it a lot.
Yes, that absolutely.
You and I know it, but I hope the students are learning it.
No, absolutely, and I think that's an important aspect that not only the players or the parents, they tend to not understand that, because the coach, particularly the coach that really wants to recruit them, obviously can promise a lot of things, and maybe they can't always deliver on that message. But I think it's important to have those people do that. So one of the things that we're going to touch on, obviously, for the people that are participating in our College Pathway program, our last module is going to touch on a lot more of the soccer recruitment when we have our college coach panel. But one of the things I think is important for the families to know as they make that first introduction, and one of the questions we got here from a New Jersey FCUSA player was regarding online profiles and soccer resumes. Now, obviously, when they first make that first step, what should they be doing in terms of creating that soccer resume? Are the online profiles something that they need to be investing in? Are the third-party apps that there are plenty of them out there that you're very familiar with?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that they should be looking to do, or is it enough to obviously when they go to tournaments with FCUSA and they'll have that information that will go to college coaches that are actually watching them on that field?
I don't think that a paid resource for a resume is important. But if there's a free resource that's electronic that enables the scholar athlete to keep up their soccer resume and make additions and subtractions from time to time, that makes a lot of sense to me. Coaches are mostly not hunting down players.
Right.
They're chasing after age group national team players, and they're looking at players who make themselves known to them, either directly or through coaches like yourself. So it's good to have a resource where you can assemble your information and update your information. That information should include your personal accomplishments in soccer, your team accomplishments second, and then some academic qualities as they develop for you, because as we said before, early on you don't have a meaningful transcript, GPA, or standardized test scores. Does that answer the question you think that was asked by the player in New Jersey?
I think so. One of the things that she does also ask, which I can answer to Leslie from New Jersey, is in terms of video content, FCUSA are looking at ways where we can help develop highlights for players that then can be sent very easily to college coaches. Obviously, the way things are going in the digital world, coaches are a lot more interested in video than a piece of paper resume. So one of the things that we are looking at as an organization, as a club, and we are actually currently beta testing some software to create some individual highlights that you would be able to then send
You
to
told
colleges.
me about that.
Yes.
That's spectacular.
Yeah,
That's
so-
really amazing.
so
thing you're looking at.
We're hoping that we'll continue to do that in the spring and then rolling it out next fall for all of our players so that they'll be able to help create their own highlights.
Can I make a point to those players who are listening to that, Mark? You and I have talked about this a lot. Coaches don't want to only see a highlight. They want to see run of play. They want to see how you recover from a mistake. We've talked about this over the years. So when you're working on that material, be sure to include some of everything, because they're not fools. They've done this before.
Right, absolutely. And we do have another question from another FCUSA New Jersey parent, and they are, again, talking a little bit about those third-party apps that are out there that can be very high priced, where they will put video together for you, they will put resumes together for you, they will send them to college coaches. I know that you have been of the mind that that doesn't mean it's getting to the top of the list. So in terms of people and parents investing in that side, is that something that is money well spent for them in terms of doing those things, or is it just an additional add-on, for them?
I think that some of those items cost over $2,000. So for $2,000, a parent and a child can get in a car and visit a college. And when they come away from that college, they know an awful lot more about what they want to get out of college. And if they've gotten a thorough information session, they've also learned what the costs are. They've also learned how those costs are defrayed by need-based aid, by merit aid, by athletic aid, if it's a Division I school. I do not see the return on investment of $2,000 to use one of these services that mass mails. And you've talked to some of the same coaches, because we've shared our friendships with some of these guys, and they say that they recognize a stock letter and a stock resume, and it goes in the garbage. There are certainly coaches who are desperate for their players, and those coaches do not throw it in the garbage. But if the players are good, and if they've been paying attention to their studies, they don't really need that.
They don't need. Excellent. That's great. I think that's great advice, because I think that a lot of the times, when parents get to that freshman, sophomore, junior year, there becomes a little bit more stress. There's a little bit more tension. It's almost a case of we have to do this, and this to get to where we want to be, and it's not always the case.
I understand that. Completely understand that. But it's not necessarily the best strategy.
Excellent. So in terms of that resume, team accomplishments, their individual accomplishments. How about things that they're doing outside of those, the soccer, outside of their academics, more community-based? Is that something that's important to players that they should be doing in those early years, and then adding that to their additional?
Be the college coach for a minute. You know this well enough by now.
I can do that.
The player doesn't tell you any of that stuff, and you're going to have to carry this player to admissions. You feeling good?
No. I would
And
like to know more.
the player's academics are just a little bit soft for your college, but not impossible. You've had players get admitted with that kind of an academic profile before. You want some extracurricular activities in there?
Absolutely.
That's right. That's
Absolutely.
what you want to carry, right?
Absolutely.
And if you really want that player, what do you want that player to do for admissions?
Everything they can.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that I think gets missed from time to time, that the coach wants a good admissions file.
Right. All-rounded. A general all-round from academics to soccer to extracurricular.
If that
That's the important
student
thing.
has been, what day do you give off? Do you give these kids any day off?
Not really. Depends on their coach. No, not
Okay.
often. They do
But
get some time
if
in
they get a
December
day,
off.
if they get a day off now and then, and they're going to the food pantry on a regular basis on that rare day off, the coach knows what that means. That college coach knows how busy these student athletes are, and if they're using some of their time for the good of their community, that's grit, that's citizenship, that's difficult, and they're doing it, and that's important. Any of those things that are happening are as important to the coach as they are to admissions.
Great. So as we're talking specifically about the freshmen and the sophomores and that first introduction to the recruitment and admissions process, and I think it's important to know the difference there between the recruitment process and the admissions process. So can you just talk briefly on those two elements, because I think people that tends to get a little configured about which is what, why is one, why is one the other?
Okay, so let's talk about the pressures on a coach as opposed to the pressures on an admissions office. And let's talk about a good Division III college. Let's talk about something on the range of both Dickinson and Franklin and Marshall in Pennsylvania. Slightly different style of student body, slightly different style of college, but not so different statistically in their students. The admissions office is trying to protect, unfortunately, their position in the U.S. News and World Report rankings. And they're trying to be sure, therefore, that their students have certain profiles that U.S. News and World Report will see and will give them good rankings. If they don't get good rankings, hurts their bond ratings, it hurts their alumni relations, hurts a lot of things. That's admissions concern, that they're getting the right students, that they have the right academic interests, that they're going to retain through 4 years, that they're going to graduate. Coach, he knows that's admissions concern, but the coach's concerns are a little different. The coach wants to win.
Right.
The more he wins,
As older.
exactly, and the coach needs to win. And he wants players who can impact his program immediately. And I'm sorry if I keep using the masculine, it's just kind of easy for me, right? So those two are different, and they're ultimately going to come together. The conversation with the college is going to be extremely cordial at all times. It is exceedingly rare for someone in an admissions office to tell a freshman or a sophomore that they're not going to get in. That's not their business. And the coach is going to want to make his decisions later. He may be more discouraging early on.
Right.
Because it's wasting his time if he's pursuing a player who doesn't look like they're going to fit into their system. That's a distinction. I'm not sure it's all the distinctions, but it gives you a little idea of the interplay between the two.
Right.
Have I mentioned before, Mark, that admissions makes the admission decision?
Yes.
The coach does not.
That was clear from the first line, Larry. Now, before we talk a little bit about D1, D2, D3,
Yes.
And a brief overview, obviously for parents that are stepping into that's also a very difficult challenge and I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what D1 is versus D2 versus D3.
Yes.
I do want to just remind those that are watching that if they do want to continue to send in questions, please do so. We're happy to answer all of the questions that you put forward. I also want to remind you that this is just the first module of our College Pathway program. We will have a total of 5 modules next week. There is a seminar, it's actually a webinar for all FCUSA players geared towards juniors. It takes place live on Sunday at 7 o'clock, and you have to pre-register for that webinar, and the link and the password for that will be sent out via TeamSnap. So please, when you get that, if you are interested in the webinar next week, please make sure that you pre-register when we get that through. Beyond that, we will also have a third module which will include a lot of the questions that we're getting here a little bit more in depth, and we'll be putting out some videos based on certain questions that we get from our families between now and February. And our fourth module is our only paid module. It is a $30 charge, and it is an intimate webinar with Larry. We will be limiting those webinars to only 10 to 12 families at a time, and there will be multiple of them, where there will be a lot more personal in terms of your situation and where you are in that recruitment and admissions process. Our final module will be our college coach panel, which is going to be geared towards what college coaches specifically are looking at, and as we've already deciphered, that stuff can be very different to what the college and the admissions office are looking for. So before we go into the next kind of topic and talking about the divisions, Larry, one of the questions that we've got that I will kind of jump to right now is the college ID camps.
Yep.
This is a question that's come in from our chat. And as freshmen, and sophomores, should they be attending college ID camps? How do they decide which ones, and how many really should they be doing?
So there's a dramatic difference in college camps. Some college camps are run by and staffed by that college coach and possibly some of his colleagues. And those are very strong camps. And some college camps are less selective and staffed by players. Every college camp, regardless of which type, is a revenue item for that coach. And I don't begrudge them that.
Right.
They don't get paid so much in the regular season, and those that can do a camp, those are good. But for a freshman and a sophomore, I think some of those camps are going to show you a new level of play. You're going to play, first of all, with players you haven't before, and that's good. They're going to show you a new level of play and a new sort of coaching, and I think that's important. The distinction comes in junior year. In junior year, you need to be sure that there's some meaning to that camp. So, what would I say? I say if you have the time and you have the inclination, you get on a campus, you see what that campus is like. For a freshman or sophomore, almost any type of camp is fine. They're not really so big for identifying players.
Right.
The camp that is looking to identify players, you will be able to tell when you start to know programs and colleges. You'll be able to tell because there'll be 4 or 5 coaches from different colleges. You will know by that time that the level of play at those colleges is different. You will know that the level of academic challenge is different. And when there's that sort of variety among the coaches, that's truly a camp where coaches are looking for players.
Right.
Because the player who isn't suitable academically for Amherst may be suitable for another college.
Right.
And that's why they're all there.
Right. So, as a freshman and a sophomore, would you think that it's better for those players to go and, as you stated earlier, go and just explore a college campus at that age until they get to kind of the later sophomore summer, junior summer, where they can actually identify those camps that are going to be important based on the research that they've already done? So it's almost worth more of their time to go and visit those colleges versus trying to find that ID camp that might be the fit that fits in.
I agree, and especially if it's going to take you out of your tournament schedule with your team. That doesn't make sense to me to do that.
Okay, so with that, we're going to turn our attention a little bit to Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. So I guess the best way to kind of do this is for you to give us kind of a brief overview to those parents and those players of the differences between the 3 divisions.
I'm going to try to touch on the things other than pure soccer. So Division 1 schools, generally, this is a gross generalization, are larger schools. Now, Furman College in South Carolina is very small. It's Division 1. Colgate is small. It's Division 1. So it's not as though they're established according to size. It's not as though that's a requirement of a Division One. But Division One schools in the main are larger, and they have an effort to have national attention. They also can all give athletic scholarships. That's a big distinction that you have to keep in mind, except for the Ivy League. There are no athletic scholarships in the Ivy League. If anyone tells a parent that somebody got an athletic scholarship in the Ivy League, you could call them a liar, although that might be discourteous to do, to just call it out there. They don't have such a piece of paper.
Okay.
It doesn't exist in an Ivy League college. And in terms of players, sometimes a Division III college will have players of a quality equivalent to a Division I college, and frequently the distinction will be some size and speed distinction, because it's physically more challenging in Division I. It's a pretty direct game. It's not always a sophisticated game. It's pretty much up and down the field and a lot of crashing of bodies, right? So you've seen these games.
Absolutely.
Division II is a little more regional. They can also give athletic scholarships. They don't have as national a scope. They tend not to be as academically demanding as Division I or Division III schools. Once again, it's very much a generalization, but that's who they attract. And then Division III, there are no athletic scholarships. There's a broad range of academic standard, and let me come back and say there are no athletic scholarships.
I think one of the misconceptions that people have is the level of play at a Division One versus, I say, a Division III school. And as someone that's coached for a long time, I've heard that many a times from well, if they go to that Division III school, well, that's not as good. They're not as good a player. But I think that's very a misconception of what people are looking for. So can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that and why that misconception might be there?
Yeah, I don't know how that misconception arises, but I mean, I touched upon the fact that there's a size issue, there's sometimes a speed issue, but the skill, there's an awful lot of skill across all the levels. And if you look at the top levels of Division III soccer players, you look at those top teams, and if you were to match them up against lower level Division I teams, if the referee is going to call the fouls, right, because there could be a big size difference. If you could get the fouls called, that Division III team is going to knock the ball around and frustrate that Division I team and beat them. They're not classed by quality, they're classed by other factors. And in fact, some of these colleges are so selective and desirable that they attract highly desirable athletes as well, not only in soccer, but in other sports. So the idea that you rank Division I, II, and III by quality, that's simply incorrect.
I guess going off of that, can you elaborate then a little bit more on maybe the demands of the difference between, from the athletic perspective as well as the academic perspective? I know there's two separate things. Can you talk a little bit about the athletic demands between the three divisions and then the academic demands between the three divisions as well?
Right. So, a Division I athlete in any sport is going to have a set off-season program, and it's going to be supervised by the captains. There's a very limited amount of coach exposure time, but it's there, and that it's a year-round commitment. There is no off-season. There's just not a playing season, and in soccer, there's frequently a short spring season of games. Division III, once the season is over, it's voluntary. There's a training regimen that's given. The students go to the gym. The most motivated players will be in the gym because they want to play next year, and they know they've grown up being players in your club, and they know you have to stay fit. It's a gigantic difference. There's also a problem in some Division I schools when you want to study abroad. Some coaches won't go for it. It's unfortunate, because life is about more than just soccer,
right,
but they won't go for it. It's rarely a problem in Division III. And the academic demands are really not continuous with the level with Division I, Division III. The academic demands are separate. The academic demands of MIT are certainly as high as any Division I school.
Right.
Okay? and we could list any number of those colleges. So Division One is 4 hours a day, year round. Division Three is 4 hours a day, but not year round. You get a break.
Okay, and how about in Division Two? A little bit in between?
A little bit in between, and your players, and most of the players we know, we less frequently see them going into Division Two.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to kind of touch on our last topic for now, and that is going to be the difference between athletic aid, need-based aid, and merit aid.
One of my favorites.
I know this one is the one you like. Obviously, as a parent, maybe new to this, my player has just gone into their high school, or maybe they're into their sophomore year, playing very competitively here, at FC USA, competing in the right tournaments, has the right coach. I think it's quite daunting as a parent to figure out what all of that is, that the financial aspect of that, between the difference between the merit-based aid, the need-based aid, and obviously any athletic aid. So if you can elaborate on that, I think that would be very helpful to all of our players.
We did a seminar some time ago, and the topic was all money is green, right?
Yep.
So families can get a little bit hung up and confused about this. They will learn it. I shouldn't diminish the ability of the families to understand this. They certainly will understand it. However, it could take some time. It's quite likely that a coach at a college will want to package aid for a student. If he wants to get that student, if he has the ability to bring in money, then he wants to package aid. He doesn't want to spend his entire budget, which is an athletic aid budget. So if that student has documentable need, and they can get need-based aid, federal or institutional, meaning the college gave the money, he wants that in the package. If that student is one with a very high academic profile for the school, and that school grants merit aid, not all do, then he wants that in the package. And he may only give $1, right? And if even in Division One, what if he's giving $1, but the total package is good? In fact, let's make a point about that. The need-based aid is based purely on the finances of the parents, and if the parents don't change, well, that'll still be there. The merit aid is frequently tied to some GPA. Maybe a 3.0 GPA has to be maintained, and if the student is getting merit aid, meaning they're strong for the school, they frequently can maintain that GPA. The athletic aid goes away if the student gets injured.
Right.
Not 100% of the time. It is possible to grant a scholarship, but I don't think we see it much in soccer. So, this dependence or this passion for athletic scholarships, I believe, is misplaced. All money is green. And this is worth families getting to understand.
Okay. And I know that the athletic aid is obviously also tied to the letter of intent, the national letter of intent.
In Division 1 and 2.
In Division 1 and 2. So I don't know if you want to elaborate with that portion of the national letter of intent as well.
I'm going to come back to a theme.
Okay.
The national letter of intent, money is green. And the national letter of intent should be tied with a preliminary award before the letter is issued that says which pockets that money's coming out of. Who's paying, who's contributing to that total scholarship package? Is it need, is it merit, and is it athletic? The other part is, it is not an offer of admission. It usually leads to an offer of admission. It is not going to be generated unless there's been a conversation between the coach and the admissions office. But you have to listen carefully about whether you're going to get admitted. There's a lawsuit going on in which a bunch of people, I wouldn't say that, well, there's a lawsuit going on against Harvard, and some data was released that's never been seen before. And I've read the expert reports in that Harvard case. Among recruited athletes at Harvard, not just walk-ons, among recruited athletes, 84% are admitted. 16% are not admitted. That's not national letter of intent, understand, but if they had it, that's what it would be. Everybody does not get admitted. Things go wrong. Coaches are pulling for a player, admissions doesn't really like them. Or grades go down. Grades go down and admissions doesn't like it, there's nothing the coach can say. So, the national letter of intent is a good, strong indication. It will happen in November for the right athlete. It is a sort of a commitment, but it's a commitment to a scholarship. It is not a commitment to admissions.
Okay, well, thank you, Larry. Though, in order to sum up, I think obviously we want to focus on our freshman and sophomore athletes. One thing that they should be doing is starting to view schools, starting to view campuses. That should be something they should be doing ahead of their college IDs. And then as they go through that process, we can help them then narrow that down and get into the things that they would start to do as a junior, which we will touch on next week in the second of our modules. But that's going to be the first thing. They need to start to really look and decide if they like a certain campus and if they like a certain school. So that's where they can use the tournaments that they're going to with FCUSA and start to explore. That first step is the exploration of schools.
And there is no harm going to a nearby college that you're not interested in attending. Go to the tour, go to the information session, because it doesn't take hours to get there. Go and listen and start to understand what goes into making a college choice.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I do want to remind people to watch our promo video of our College Pathway program, as that does lay out each of our modules as we go through the next 6 months or so that's absolutely the best way to stay up with that. In terms for resources that people are looking for, you can find Larry's contact information at our College Pathway page on your individual club sites, as well as the national site. There is the Learning Associates logo. If you click on that, it will take you to the website. If you are interested in spending some time with Larry, you can contact him through that website by going through there from our College Pathway page at www.thefootballclubusa.com. Don't forget to subscribe to FCUSA TV here on YouTube so that you can stay up to date with all of our shows that are coming out, and be prepared for our Team of the Months for November coming out tomorrow, as well as our fall review show that is being released next week, which covers all of our clubs and how we have done throughout the course of the fall. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to Larry.
Thanks for
and we
having me.
hope it was very informational for you.
It was
Take
a
care.
pleasure.